I stood in the middle of the warehouse, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a knife. The beam trembled in my hand. Dust particles floated in the air, thick enough to choke on. My partner, Officer Martinez, moved beside me, his boots crunching on broken glass. "Detective Harris," he whispered. "Over here." I turned toward his voice. The light caught something on the floor, a red scarf, torn and dirty, half buried under a collapsed wooden crate. My stomach dropped. I'd seen that scarf before, in a photograph, around Emily Carter's neck. "Bag it," I said, my voice barely steady. Martinez knelt down, pulling out an evidence bag. As he lifted the scarf, something else caught the light. A cell phone. The screen was shattered, the case cracked down the middle. Dark smears covered the edges. "Is that?" Martinez started. "Blood," I finished. "Yeah, probably." The warehouse groaned around us, metal beams settling in the cold. 3 weeks. Emily had been missing for 3 weeks. And now, standing in this forgotten corner of Riverside, I knew we weren't searching for a runaway anymore. We were searching for a body. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to push down the rage building in my chest. Someone had done this. Someone had taken that bright-eyed, 17-year-old girl and brought her here. And somewhere in this town, they were still walking free. 2 days earlier, I'd been sitting across from Marissa Carter in her living room. The house smelled like coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Emily's mother looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she clutched a framed photograph. She wouldn't just leave, Marissa said for what must have been the 100th time. Not Emily, not without telling me. I'd heard it before. Every parent of every missing teenager said the same thing. But something in Marissa's voice made me believe her. Something in the way her hands gripped that photograph, knuckles white with desperation. "Tell me about the last time you saw her," I said gently. Marissa's face crumpled. "Friday afternoon. She was going to meet a friend at the cafe. She said she'd be home by dinner." Her voice broke. "She never came home." I wrote it down in my notebook, even though I'd already read the initial report. Emily Carter, 17 years old, honor student, quiet, creative, kept to herself mostly. No history of running away. No boyfriend that anyone knew about. Did she seem upset? Worried about anything? Marissa shook her head. She was normal, maybe a little distracted, but she was a teenager. They're always on their phones. She paused, looking at me with desperate eyes. "You don't think she just ran away, do you?" I chose my words carefully. "We're exploring every possibility." Emily's bedroom looked frozen in time. The bed was made perfectly, stuffed animals arranged on the pillows. Posters of bands I'd never heard of covered the walls. A desk sat by the window, notebooks stacked neatly beside a closed laptop. Marissa stood in the doorway, unable to come inside. "I haven't touched anything," she whispered. In case you needed to see it exactly how she left it." I pulled on latex gloves and moved carefully through the room. The closet was half open, clothes hanging in neat rows. Nothing seemed disturbed. Nothing seemed wrong. But that was the problem. If Emily had run away, she would have taken clothes. A backpack. Something. I opened the desk drawer. School papers, pens, a small journal with a purple cover. I picked up the journal carefully. "Can I asked Marissa. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. The entries were typical teenage thoughts. Complaints about homework, song lyrics, doodles in the margins. But as I flipped through the pages, one name kept appearing. "Jason." "Mrs. Carter," I called out. "Who's Jason?" Marissa stepped into the room, wiping her eyes. "Jason? I don't know any Jason. Emily never mentioned him to me." I showed her the journal entries. Small notes. "Jason says he understands me. Talked to Jason for hours last night. Jason makes me feel seen." Marissa's face went pale. She never told me about any boy. The cafe where Emily was last seen sat on the corner of Main Street, a small place called the Daily Grind. I pushed through the door, the bell chiming overhead. The owner, a woman named Patricia, looked up from behind the counter. "You're the detective," she said. Not a question. "I am. You worked the day Emily Carter disappeared." Patricia nodded, her expression somber. "Sweet girl. Always ordered the same thing. Hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. Like a kid. Was she here that Friday?" "Yeah. Came in around 4 o'clock. Sat in the corner booth." Patricia pointed to a spot by the window. She was on her phone the whole time, texting someone. She looked nervous. Nervous how? Kept checking the door. Kept looking at her phone. Like she was waiting for someone, but hoping they wouldn't show up. Patricia leaned closer. About 20 minutes after she got here, a boy came in. Older than her, maybe 19 or 20. They talked for a bit, then left together. My pulse quickened. Can you describe it? Tall, dark hair, wearing a gray jacket. I didn't get a good look at his face. She paused, but I remember thinking he looked angry. I showed her a photo on my phone, the yearbook pictures we'd pulled from the local high school. Patricia studied the screen, scrolling through faces. Then she stopped. Her finger hovered over one photograph. That's him, she said. Jason Crowley. The name hit me like a punch. Crowley. I knew that name. Everyone in Riverside knew that name. Chief David Crowley had run the police department for 15 years before retiring last spring. His son, Jason, had a reputation. Nothing concrete. Nothing that ever stuck, but whispers followed him around town. You're sure? I asked. Positive. I've seen him in here before. Always gave me the creeps. I thanked Patricia and stepped outside, immediately calling Martinez. Run a background check on Jason Crowley. Everything you can find. The former Chiefs kid? Martinez sounded hesitant. Yeah, the former Chiefs kid. An hour later, I sat in my office, reading through Jason's file. No arrests. A few complaints filed over the years. Harassment, stalking accusations from 2 different girls, but nothing that went anywhere. Each complaint had been dismissed. Each investigation quietly closed. I leaned back in my chair, staring at Jason's photo. Clean cut. Handsome. The kind of face that could charm anyone. But his eyes bothered me. Even in a photograph, they looked cold. My phone buzzed. A text from Martinez. Found something? Emily's phone records just came through. I grabbed my jacket and headed out. The conference room table was covered in printouts. Martinez had highlighted dozens of text messages between Emily's number and another phone, an unregistered prepaid cell. They've been messaging for 4 months, Martinez said. Multiple times a day. Started casual, then got more intense. I scanned the messages. They told a story I'd seen too many times before. An older boy paying attention to a lonely girl. Compliments turning into demands. Affection turning into control. Don't tell your mom about us. You're mine, Emily. If you talk to other guys, I'll know. Delete these messages after you read them. The final text, sent the day Emily disappeared, made my blood run cold. Meet me at the cafe at 4. Don't make me wait. You know what happens when you make me wait. We need to bring Jason in, I said. Martinez shifted uncomfortably. His father still has friends on the force. I don't care whose son he is. We're bringing him in. But when we arrived at the Crowley residence 2 hours later, the house was dark. No cars in the driveway. No answer at the door. A neighbor called out from her porch. They left this morning, she said. David and Jason both. Didn't say where they were going. I got the call at 2 in the morning. A security guard at the abandoned industrial district on the east side of town had seen someone moving around the old Campbell warehouse. By the time Martinez and I arrived, the area was empty, but we decided to search anyway. That's how we found the scarf, the phone, the blood. Now, standing in that warehouse, I knew Emily hadn't run away. She'd been taken, and Jason Crowley was the only suspect we had. We need to find him, I told Martinez. Now, we issued an APB. Jason's photo went out to every department in the state. But hours passed with no leads. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Then at dawn, my phone rang. An unknown number. Detective Harris? The voice was young, female, terrified. Who is this? My name is Claire. Claire Patterson. I need to talk to you about Jason Crowley. I pulled over to the side of the road, my heart pounding. What about him? He did this to me too, she whispered. 2 years ago. I tried to tell someone, but his father made it go away. She was crying now. Please find Emily before it's too late. Where can I meet you? I asked. Claire Patterson sat across from me in the interview room, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She was 19 now, a college freshman, but she looked younger. Scared. Broken. I was 17 when I met Jason, she began. He was charming, said all the right things, made me feel special. She laughed bitterly. I was so stupid. You weren't stupid, I said gently. He manipulated you. She nodded, tears sliding down her face. It started with texts. Then he wanted to see me all the time. Got angry if I talked to other people. Showed up at my house uninvited. My parents didn't like him, but I didn't listen. What happened? Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. One night, I tried to break up with him. Told him I couldn't do it anymore. He didn't take it well. Grabbed me, dragged me to his car. She closed her eyes. He drove me out to some abandoned building. Said if I tried to leave him, he'd make sure no one ever found me. My stomach turned. How did you get away? A car drove by. Headlights spooked him. He let me go, but made me promise not to tell anyone. She looked at me with hollow eyes. I went to the police anyway, filed a report, but within a day, it disappeared. His father made sure of that. I spent the next hour taking Claire's statement, every detail she could remember. When she finally left, Martinez was waiting outside. We've had a problem, he said. David Crowley just walked into the station. Says he wants to talk. Former chief, Crowley sat in my office like he owned it. Gray hair perfectly combed, expensive suit, confident smile. Everything about him radiated authority, but his eyes were hard. Detective Harris, he said smoothly. I understand you're looking for my son. We are. Do you know where he is? I don't, but I can tell you he had nothing to do with Emily Carter's disappearance. He leaned forward. My son is a good boy. A little troubled, yes, but not violent. We have evidence that says otherwise. David's smile didn't waver. Evidence can be misinterpreted. Witnesses can be mistaken. I spent 15 years in law enforcement. I know how these things work. Is that why you made Claire Patterson's complaint disappear? His expression darkened. That girl was unstable, making accusations she couldn't prove. I protected my son from a false allegation. And what about Emily? Is she making false allegations too? David stood up, buttoning his jacket. Find real evidence, detective. Until then, leave my family alone. He walked to the door, then paused. And be careful. Your career is still young. We'll be ashamed to ruin it. After David left, I sat in my office, rage burning in my chest. This was exactly what Claire had described. Power protecting power. The system protecting its own. But I wasn't backing down. I called the district attorney's office, requesting a search warrant for the Crowley residence. It took 8 hours of arguments and political maneuvering, but finally, a judge signed off. We executed the warrant at midnight. David Crowley stood in his doorway, arms crossed, while we searched every room. His lawyer showed up within minutes, threatening lawsuits and consequences. In Jason's bedroom, we found what we were looking for, a box hidden in the back of his closet, filled with photographs. Dozens of photographs. Emily, Claire, other girls I didn't recognize. Some taken from a distance, like someone had been following them. And at the bottom of the box, a red scarf. Different from the one in the warehouse, but identical in style. It had Emily's initials embroidered on the corner. Bag everything, I told Martinez. David's lawyer started shouting about improper search procedures, but I ignored him. We had enough now. Enough to make this stick. We just had to find Jason before he ran. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Emily's best friend, a girl named Ava Chun. No, I stopped myself. Her name was Ava Brooks. She'd been too scared to talk to police earlier, but now, with news of the search warrant spreading, she showed up at the station. I have something, she said, pulling out her phone. Emily sent me messages. The day she disappeared. I looked at the screen. The conversation was heartbreaking. Emily, he's scaring me. Ava. Ava, then don't go. Stay home. Emily, I can't. He knows where I live. He knows everything. Ava, tell your mom. Tell the police. Emily, his dad IS the police. Nobody will believe me. The final message, sent at 4:37 p.m. that Friday, read, he says we're going somewhere to talk. I'm scared. If something happens to me, it was Jason. Why didn't you show this to anyone before? I asked Ava. She was crying. I thought she was being dramatic. We're teenagers. We're always dramatic. I didn't think. Her voice broke. I didn't think he'd actually hurt her. I put a hand on her shoulder. This isn't your fault, but I need you to send me these messages. They might help us find her. With Ava's messages and the evidence from Jason's room, We had enough for an arrest warrant. The problem was finding him. Every lead came up empty. His credit cards hadn't been used. His phone was off. It was like he'd been planning this disappearance. Then Martinez got a hit. A gas station attendant 2 counties over remembered seeing Jason's car, a silver Honda, parked behind the building for several hours the night Emily disappeared. The attendant had thought it was strange, but didn't call it in. We pulled security footage from the gas station. There, clear as day, was Jason filling up his tank. But he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat, barely visible, was a girl with long dark hair. Emily. She was alive. Martinez breathed. The timestamp read 6:47 p.m., almost 3 hours after she disappeared from the cafe. Where did he take her? I asked, zooming in on the footage. Martinez pointed to the background. That road behind the station leads to the industrial district. My heart sank. The warehouse. He'd taken her to the warehouse. We organized a full search team. Cadaver dogs, forensic specialists, officers combing every inch of the building. What we found broke me. In a back room, hidden behind stacked crates, was Emily's backpack. Her wallet, her school ID, but no Emily. The search continued for 2 more days. We found DNA evidence, Emily's blood, Jason's fingerprints. We found rope, duct tape, evidence of a struggle. But we didn't find Emily's body. The community was in chaos. Parents were terrified. The local news ran stories 24 hours a day. Marissa Carter stood in front of cameras, begging for information, begging for her daughter. And still, Jason remained hidden. Then, on the 4th day of searching, we got a call from truck driver. He'd been traveling through a rural area 40 miles north when he saw something strange in a drainage ditch. He thought it might be a mannequin at first, but then he got closer. I drove there with Martinez, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I knew what we were going to find. I'd known since we found that scarf. The coroner was already on scene when we arrived. She looked at me, her expression grim. "It's her," she said simply. I walked to the edge of the ditch. Emily Carter lay at the bottom, partially covered by leaves and debris. She looked small, fragile, like she was sleeping. I turned away, fighting the urge to be sick. Cause of death? I managed to ask. Won't know for certain until the autopsy. But there are visible injuries. Strangulation marks on her neck. Defensive wounds on her hands. The coroner's voice was clinical, professional. She fought back. I had to tell Marissa myself. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Watching a mother's world collapse, seeing the exact moment hope died in her eyes. I'll carry that with me forever. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just sat down on the floor of her living room and stared at nothing. "Where is he?" she finally whispered. "Where is the person who did this?" "We're looking for him, Mrs. Carter. I promise you we'll find him." "You better," she said, looking at me with eyes full of rage and grief. "Because if you don't, I will." The autopsy results came back confirming our worst fears. Emily had been beaten, strangled, and left in that ditch while she was still alive. She died from exposure and her injuries over several hours. Alone, terrified. The medical examiner estimated she'd been dead for approximately 2 weeks when we found her. Jason had killed her the same night. He took her from the cafe. The manhunt intensified. Jason's face was everywhere. News stations, social media, wanted posters. A $50,000 reward was offered for information leading to his arrest. And finally, 5 days after we found Emily's body, we got the call we'd been waiting for. A motel clerk in Tennessee recognized Jason from the news. He was registered under a fake name, but the clerk was certain. "Send everyone," I told Martinez. "I want him alive." The Tennessee State Police coordinated with us for the arrest. I was on a plane within an hour, arriving just as the tactical team surrounded the motel. Jason was in room 247. The door was reinforced from the inside, but that didn't matter. The breach team went in fast and hard. I heard the shouting. "Police, get on the ground. Hands where I can see them. No gunshots." That was good. They brought him out in handcuffs 5 minutes later. Jason Crowley looked nothing like his photograph now. His hair was greasy, his face unshaven, his eyes wild. When he saw me, he smiled. "Detective Harris," he said calmly. I was wondering when you'd find me. Jason Crowley, you're under arrest for the kidnapping and murder of Emily Carter. I read him his rights, my voice steady despite the fury coursing through me. He laughed, actually laughed. You can't prove I killed anyone. We have your DNA at the crime scene. We have witness testimony. We have evidence from your bedroom. We have everything we need. His smile faded. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Good. You should be afraid. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. Jason sat across from me, his lawyer beside him. Not his father's lawyer, but a public defender who looked overwhelmed. I didn't kill Emily, Jason insisted for the 100th time. I cared about her. You cared about her? I slid the crime scene photos across the table. This is how you show you care? He looked away. That wasn't supposed to happen. What wasn't supposed to happen? His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Don't say anything else. But Jason was breaking. I could see it. The cocky confidence was cracking. She tried to leave me, he said quietly. She said she didn't want to see me anymore. Said I was scaring her. But I loved her. I just wanted to talk. To make her understand. So you dragged her to a warehouse? I just wanted to talk. His voice rose. But she wouldn't listen. She kept saying no, kept trying to run. She made me so angry. He put his head in his hands. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted her to stop trying to leave. You strangled her, Jason. You beat her and left her to die in a ditch. She shouldn't have tried to leave, he whispered. If she just stayed, none of this would have happened. I wanted to reach across the table but I didn't. I kept my composure because I needed his confession on record. I needed every word. The trial began 3 months later. The courthouse was packed every single day. Marissa Carter sat in the front row, her face a mask of determination. Behind her, Emily's friends, teachers, people from the community who'd never even met her, but were outraged by what had happened. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. The text messages, the photographs, the DNA evidence, Claire Patterson's testimony about what Jason had done to her, Ava's testimony about Emily's fear, and finally, my testimony about finding Emily's body. The defense tried to paint Jason as troubled, mentally ill, not responsible for his actions. They brought in psychologists who testified about his difficult childhood, his need for control stemming from abandonment issues. But none of it mattered when the jury saw those crime scene photos. When they heard Emily's final message to Ava, if something happens to me, it was Jason. David Crowley sat in the back of the courtroom every day, his face expressionless. He never spoke to anyone, never showed any emotion. But I saw him watching me sometimes, and his eyes promised consequences. I didn't care. Let him try. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Jason showed no reaction as the verdict was read. But when the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, his father stood up and walked out. After the trial, I thought I'd feel relief. Justice had been served. Emily's killer was behind bars. But instead, I just felt empty, because Emily was still dead, and no amount of justice would bring her back. I went to her grave on a cold Tuesday morning. The headstone was simple: Emily Carter, beloved daughter, forever young. Someone had left flowers, fresh ones. I knelt down, touching the cold marble. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry we didn't find you in time. I'm sorry we didn't see the signs. I'm sorry the system failed you. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the cemetery. I stood there for a long time, thinking about all the what-ifs. What if Emily had told her mother about Jason? What if Claire's complaint had been taken seriously? What if David Crowley hadn't protected his son? What if? But what ifs didn't change anything. As I walked back to my car, my phone rang. Martinez, we got another case, he said. Missing teenage girl. Last seen with an older boyfriend. Family says they're worried. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I'm on my way, because this was the job. This was what I did. I found the missing. I spoke for the dead. I fought for justice, even when the system tried to protect the guilty. The investigation into David Crowley's role in covering up his son's crimes took another year. Internal Affairs dug through his entire career, finding a pattern of cases that had been quietly buried. Complaints against Jason that disappeared. Evidence that went missing. Witnesses who were intimidated into silence. It turned out Claire Patterson wasn't the only girl Jason had hurt. There were 5 others. 5 girls who tried to speak up and been silenced by David's influence. The district attorney brought charges against David for obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, and abuse of power. His trial was shorter than his son's, but the verdict was the same. Guilty. He got 15 years. Not nearly enough, in my opinion. But at least he'd spend time behind bars. At least his career was over. His reputation destroyed. Watching him led away in handcuffs, I felt a grim satisfaction. This was what happened when you protected monsters. Eventually, the truth came out. Emily's case changed things in Riverside. The police department underwent massive reforms. New protocols for handling complaints, independent oversight, training on recognizing manipulation and abuse. But the change that mattered most was simpler. People started listening. When teenage girls said they were scared, when they said someone was hurting them, adults actually paid attention. It shouldn't have taken Emily's death to make that happen. But at least something good came from the tragedy. Marissa Carter started a foundation in Emily's name. It provided resources for teenagers in abusive relationships, offered counseling, taught parents how to recognize warning signs. I spoke at one of their first events, sharing what I'd learned from the case. Afterward, a mother approached me with her daughter. She wanted to tell you something, the mother said gently. The girl, maybe 15 years old, looked at me with serious eyes. My boyfriend was like Jason, controlling, scary, but I saw what happened to Emily, and she swallowed hard. I got out. I told my mom, and she believed me. The mother pulled her daughter close. "Thank you," she said to me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for finding Emily, for making sure people knew what happened to her." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, because that was the thing about this job. The victims I found couldn't be saved, but maybe their stories could save someone else. Maybe Emily's death would keep another girl from suffering the same fate. It was a small comfort, but it was something. I visited Claire Patterson one last time before she moved away to start fresh in another state. We met at a coffee shop, and she looked different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I testified at David's trial, she told me. Finally got to tell the truth about what happened, what they both did to me. How did it feel? She thought about it. Scary, but also freeing. Like I took my power back, you know? I didn't know. I'd seen it happen before. Victims becoming survivors, finding their voices. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "Go to college, study social work, help other people who've been through what I went through." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. Emily didn't get that chance, but I do, and I'm not going to waste it. We talked for another hour, and when we said goodbye, I felt hopeful. Not about Emily's case. That would always be a tragedy, but about the future, about the good that could come from speaking truth, from refusing to stay silent. As I drove home that evening, I thought about all the cases I'd worked, the lives lost, the families destroyed, the evil people we're capable of. But I also thought about the survivors, the people who refused to let their trauma define them, who turned their pain into purpose. 6 months after the trial, I got a letter. No return address. I almost didn't open it, thinking it might be from Jason or his father. But curiosity won out. The letter was from Emily. Or rather, it had been written by Emily months before she died. Marissa had found it while going through her daughter's things and thought I should see it. "Dear future me," it began. "I'm writing this because I'm scared. Scared of what Jason might do. Scared that no one will believe me if something happens. Scared that his father's power means I'll never be safe. If you're reading this, future me, I hope it means I got away. I hope it means I found the courage to tell someone, to ask for help. But if I didn't, if something happened to me, I want people to know the truth. I want them to know that I tried to be strong. I tried to protect myself. It just wasn't enough. To whoever finds this, please don't let him hurt anyone else. Please make sure people know what he is, what they both are. And to my mom, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was trying to protect you. I love you so much. Emily." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Even facing death, Emily had been thinking about others, trying to protect them, trying to warn them. She had been so brave, and the system had failed her anyway. The final chapter of Emily's story came 2 years after her death. Jason's appeal was denied. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, just as the jury had decided. David would be released eventually, but his legacy was destroyed. The man who'd once been respected throughout the community was now known as the corrupt cop who'd enabled his son's violence. Marissa continued her foundation work, speaking to schools and community groups. She turned her grief into activism, making sure Emily's name meant something more than just another tragedy. But late at night, when the work was done and the house was quiet, I knew she still cried for her daughter. Still wondered what Emily would have become if she'd been given the chance to grow up. I thought about Emily too, more than I probably should have. She haunted me in a way other cases didn't. Maybe because she'd known what was coming. Maybe because she'd tried so hard to protect herself and it hadn't been enough. Or maybe because she reminded me why I did this job, why I kept searching for the missing, kept fighting for justice even when the system was broken. Because someone had to speak for the victims. Someone had to care when the powerful tried to cover up their crimes. Someone had to believe the scared teenagers who said they were in danger. I kept Emily's case file on my desk long after it was officially closed. Sometimes I'd open it and look at her photograph, the yearbook picture where she was smiling, unaware of what was coming. Martinez asked me once why I kept torturing myself with it. Because I don't want to forget, I told him. I don't want to forget what happens when we ignore the warnings. When we let power protect predators. When we don't listen to the people asking for help. He understood. We both seen too much. Known too many victims who'd fallen through the cracks. The work continued. More cases. More missing people. More families desperate for answers. But Emily's case changed how I approached each one. I listened more carefully now. Pushed harder against resistance. Refused to accept convenient explanations that let guilty people walk free. I couldn't save Emily, but maybe I could save the next girl. And the one after that. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was all I could do. I stood at Emily's grave again on the anniversary of her death. 2 years had passed. The flowers on her headstone were fresh. Marissa came every week without fail. I thought about the question Emily's case had raised. The question that still kept me up at night. How many Emilys are out there right now? How many scared teenagers are being controlled by someone like Jason? How many fathers are protecting their guilty sons? How many warnings are being ignored? The wind picked up, cold and bitter. I pulled my coat tighter. We're trying, I said to Emily's grave. We're trying to do better. To listen. To believe. To act before it's too late. But even as I said it, I knew the truth. There would be more Emilys. More families destroyed. More cases that ended with a body in a ditch instead of a rescue. Because evil didn't announce itself. It hid behind charm and power. It manipulated and controlled. It counted on silence and complicity to survive. And sometimes, even when people tried to speak up, they weren't heard until it was too late. I walked back to my car, my phone already buzzing with a new case. A missing teenage girl, last seen with an older boyfriend. I answered the call, my voice steady despite the weight in my chest. Detective Harris, tell me everything. Because this was the job. This was the fight. And I wasn't giving up. Not ever. Emily Carter's story didn't end when the verdict was read. It lives on in every warning that went unheard, every voice that was silenced, and every moment when power chose to protect itself instead of the innocent. This case reminds us of a hard truth. Evil rarely looks like a monster. Sometimes it looks like authority. Sometimes it hides behind respect, influence, and silence. And the most dangerous question of all is not, how did this happen? But who could have stopped it? If Emily's story moved you, disturbed you, or made you think, then it has done its job. Because these stories are not just meant to be watched, they're meant to be remembered. This is True Crime Files Gist, where we uncover the truth, speak for the silenced, and make sure their stories are never buried. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, like this video, if you want to stay with us as we uncover more hidden truths, subscribe to the channel. And if you think someone else needs to hear this story, share it, because awareness can save lives. Until the next case, stay alert, stay curious, and never ignore the warnings.